But there we go. Good morning, good morning, good morning, everyone. Everything is a lot right now in really cool ways and also in really intense ways. I feel as if we are kind of collectively experiencing a birth, a rebirth. I see so many people shifting directions right now, and that feels so powerful. That feels very aligned with our nodal shift. So we've talked for the last couple of weeks about the Aries Libra axis, and the way that I talk about astrology tends to be a little conversational, as in like it's just part of another language that I kind of like weave into these things. So that's how I tend to talk about it. So and continuing in that spirit, we have people that are embarking on new beginnings. We have people that are maybe they are for the first time like stepping out in a new way in the world, maybe taking on a new community role, creating a new community role for themselves. People who are being brave, taking a risk to be seen. And this is the time for that. We just had Saturn go direct. And so with this Aries North node, Aries is the I am. Aries is the moment after you cross over the rising, the moment after you are born, the moment after you exit the birth canal. And so while we are in this time, we are experiencing a sense of newness in a way that maybe we never have before, or maybe we are having a really hard time reconciling things that are old. Maybe we're having a really hard time trying to make something old fit with something new, or old relationships, old relationship habits, things like that. And so in this period of leaning in, the thing that I keep being returned to with my clients, with myself, with us, and the things that we're doing for the show that we're working on, it is vital to not outsource this permission, to not look to the other. Because understanding that when you do that, when you're seeking that permission from a place of not having it, you're only going to find reflections of not having it around you. It is important to blaze the trail, so to speak, to do the work of cutting out a path that is your own, rather than looking to other people to tell you, this is the way to go, this is what to do, this is what to see. It's important that we embark on this individuation work of understanding the I am. So with that all in mind, I want to talk about the numerology of 3. This is our card for today. I want to talk about 3 for a moment. So anytime there is 3, let's talk 3 of Cups, 3 of Pentacles, 3 of Swords, 3, all of them, right? So 3 of Wands. This is all about collaboration. Understanding what is collaborative, where you are collaborating in your life, and whether that is a collaboration that you want to continue making. When we look to 3 of Pentacles, for instance, you are looking to people that you are going to collaborate to bring a big vision to life with. Right. And so when you're choosing those people, it's really important to connect to people who are moving in the same direction, who value the same things. Maybe you've updated your values and you need to lean in there. Whatever it might be, understanding that when we are birthing something, we are also in collaboration with it, right? We are not, if anyone has birthed anything, whether that be an actual human or an idea or something creative or anything like that, when you've birthed something, you understand that this thing kind of has a life of its own, and it's your job to just get it here, bring it here, and see what happens once it's here, right? Understanding that it is its own force that you are collaborating with is vital when we connect to these things. So if you are leaning into something new, leaning into a new pattern, a new way of being, you've discovered an old rule that you were living by on autopilot, and you're taking it off autopilot, you're addressing this specific thing, or you're coming home to who you are as a creative, as a professional, as a parent, like whatever it might be, it is vital to know that you are in collaboration with the thing that you believe that you are making, right? That thing is as much already made. It is as much already made and is its own entity, has its own energy as you are a person making it. So when we are in collaboration, it is vital to know who we are collaborating with, and what role we really want them to have in our story. So again, this is the card, and it is aptly named Birth. Birth. Her wildness calls her into unknown realms where she willingly goes. Her movement changes worlds. The birth of imagination rides on her very gentle shoulders as she dives in, embracing it all. A woman dives into the pond, arms outstretched as though she were flying. She embraces her free fall. The jungle that surrounds her is filled with the feeling of wildness. A big cat on the prowl, a symbol of the untamed feminine, and a butterfly flies through the treetops, a transformation of spirit that rises above the limitations of the world. A white rose floats above a waterfall representing emotional purity, while in the corner of the pond is a small image of Narcissus falling in love with his own beauty, a sign of the ego celebrating its own importance. One cannot see the beauty of the world when they are caught in the illusion of the ego. True freedom requires faith in the divine. Birth requires that we let go of the ego to be free. The danger of the unknown that our ego warns us about is just the wildness of our deep nature. In the wildness is born our creativity, which gives flight to our soul's expression. This card reminds us of our strength and courage, which takes us into the unknown, where we can change and grow. Use the power of imagination to free yourself from the constraints and limitations of your ego-based fear. Focus. Remember that self-care during times of transition keeps you strong. Take time to nurture yourself. Oh, all right. Let's unpack that a little bit, because this is the perfect lead into our meditation for today. So, birth requires that we let go of the ego to be free. Now, y'all know I don't do ego deaths. Not in the way of like, this is some massive dark night of the soul. I am a hero and I'm vanquishing a dragon in my underworld. Like, that is some grade A bullshit. Okay. Some hero's journey fallacy that you are living. Okay. To bring that into real life, when I discuss the idea of letting go of the ego, it's letting go of the rules. It's softening the rules the ego has, because a lot of what we discuss in kind of like new age spirituality realms and like mysticism and all of the things that branch off of this, a lot of the perspective is that the ego is the part of us that we need. Our shadow is bad. We got to get on the side of the ego, the light self. Shadow is bad. And it's like, we actually kind of have it backward. Our shadow self, our subconscious self, owns that it has the capacity to hold everything, to contain everything. It is our ego that has limits. It is our ego that has rules that says, this is how you must be. This is how you must survive. You must be geared for survival at all times, right? These are the things that we learn and are conditioned into. I've been really digging in with clients and myself and with us about the ways that we have to, the ways that we like to believe that we are acting in our own best interest. And really, we are maybe in a state of embracing the pattern, perpetuating the pattern, continuing the pattern, I think a lot of times, especially with our Aries Libra axis, we get into maturity and discipline. Aries is very temperamental, right? So it's very much, if Aries, in my opinion, is the wateriest fire sign, because they are like a tide. They're always coming in and out, in and out. The consistency is not as strong there. And so when we find ourselves repeating this process of vilifying the ego, vilifying the shadow, we have to look to spiritual maturity to actually make progress. We have to look at both of these things as, this is one part of me that learned something. I was not born this way. I learned this as a pattern, and I have to be attentive. I have to be mature. I have to be focused on attending to when it crops up. This no longer has to be a story about me now. This no longer has to be included in my I am someone who, reacts this way, or who does this thing, or who, always does X, Y, and Z, like whatever story it is that you're telling yourself. This no longer has to be part of your I am, and it instead becomes part of what I continue to refer to as the strategy you're employing in this situation, right? If I'm continuing to do something that actively does not feel good, I have to imagine that I am probably in a state of overwhelm. So I'm just doing whatever I can, right? So when I do that, I'm operating in this state of overwhelm, right? I'm past capacity. I'm up here. This is what I have capacity for, and this is where I'm operating. The difference right here is where I am experiencing all of this struggle. And I have to get myself out of overwhelm before I can employ a new strategy. So the first thing that we're focusing on is stopping the story. And in order to stop the story, that this means something about me, that I'm a bad person, or that whatever it is, the story that I'm telling myself, in order to stop the story, I have to shift my attention to what's actually happening. I'm overwhelmed. When you're in overwhelm, so this is where I'm in overwhelm, everything between here and here. When I'm in that state of overwhelm, you do not help the problem, you help the person, right? The person is in a state of overwhelm. The person needs something. Me, the person, I need something, or my partner, or my friend, or whomever it is that I'm holding space for. The person needs something. I need something. It's only once I can express and move, right? Do the things that my body wants to do to get these things out. It's only then that I can lean into problem solving that does something different, that creates a new pattern, right? The first thing I want to do, though, is stop the story. The first thing I want to do is stop making these things mean something about me. So I have to be aware of those. I have to be aware from an observer perspective, right? I am co-creating a new pattern with myself, and I'm noticing myself continuing to do the old pattern. I wonder what that might be telling me. Oh, science brain, this is giving me feedback, right? Oh shit, I'm overwhelmed. Then I can use that kind of logic, like I said, science brain, to somatically support my body and emotionally expressing what's happening in my mind, what's happening in my body, instead of letting it stay trapped all up in here where I'm running the story and I'm distracted from down here, right? Oh, I'm overwhelmed. This is what I do when I'm overwhelmed. By the way, that's called a boundary. This is what I do when. That's a boundary. That's all a boundary is. We're going to demystify it. This is what I do when. Okay, so if I am in a challenging conversation, I do not stay in conversations where people talk to me like this, where people yell, and then someone yells, and then I exit the conversation, right? But for also practical, like get your shit together and get it going stuff, right? This is what I do when I have a deadline. I write down my schedule, I follow through on my schedule, and I basically don't ask questions to my schedule. Like, this is all I'm doing. I'm just following into the schedule. This is what I do when I have a lot of free time. I let myself have more leisure time. I let myself do this, and this, right? And you're going to find that you already have a kind of natural pattern, a natural ebb and flow that you go through. It becomes a lot easier to stop fighting yourself and to really own your cycles, especially if you're someone who has a period and you cycle sync your work. You have the ability, the capability to cycle sync. And I want to be very clear. I understand that so many of these things that we talk about, it's hard to do those things if you do not also have time alone, time to downtime, and time in nature, right? Those are three vital things that if you are doing somatic work and you do have the ability to have time in nature, to spend time on yourself and to have downtime, and you're not doing those things, I'm going to tell you all of the other stuff that you're doing is probably not fucking working. That's probably why it's not fucking working, because you have to have non-working free time in nature. You have to have non-working downtime. You have to have non-working alone time. That doesn't mean not working on your creative expression, but if you have your creative expression all kinds of wrapped up in your productivity, it's going to be a hell of a lot harder to give yourself enjoyable alone time and then do your creative craft that you really want to engage in, right? So again, this is just some kind of general guidance here. But when we are in this process of collaboration with whatever it is that we're bringing forward, this new pattern, this new way of being, it's imperative that you stop stories that are not useful, that are not helpful, right? And it's not that you stop the stories and you gaslight yourself and you say, hey, I'm a terrible person. No, I'm a fantastic person. I'm a wonderful person. And you don't, that's fake as fuck. That's fake as fuck. We are not going to pretend as if we don't feel that way. We're going to observe ourselves doing that thing. Oh, it's so interesting that I'm talking to myself like that. I usually only talk to myself like that when I'm overwhelmed. Oh, ding, I'm overwhelmed. That's the problem. I'm overstimulated. That's the problem. I'm nearing a fucking shutdown response, or I've been overstimulated, or I've just had too much on my fucking plate today, right? When we're in collaboration with these things, I always remind myself, if I have to do it to get it, I'm going to have to do it to keep it. So, there are some things that's worth and some things that it's not, right? There are some things that are worth sacrifice of time, energy, emotional labor, love, money, investment of time, energy, emotional labor, love, and money. And there are some things that are just not. And that is what we are working on, pruning. I'm very into Loki right now. If you are not, I am so sorry for you. However, you really need to get into it. Season 2 is really covering the arc of the masculine wound of isolation and connection, of loneliness and community, right?
I just started season 2.
It's so good. It's so good. It is such a beautiful, beautiful story of, if you want to watch it as such, of the conscious and subconscious selves of there's 2 and 2, and look up what Jung says about 4. Okay. Look up what Jung says about 4s. So it's really exciting and fun to watch it, to me and to us, through those lenses, because I am able to let these things that are just enjoyable stories and are good storytelling, things like that, they're able to affect and impact me in a different way because I choose to watch them in that way, right? And that's honestly, I'm going to tell y'all, since we're all friends here, this is one of the things that we're going to be talking about on our show, is more of this, the pop culture stuff. My first foray into having an online community was on a platform where I'm talking about I'm shit posting about the stuff I'm watching. I'm live tweeting about the stuff I'm watching, the stuff I'm doing, the stuff I'm interested in. Right. So that is, and one of the things that we're bringing to the show is stuff that does have a cult following. Like I want people to come on and basically like sales pitch us. Tell us why your cult is the best cult to be in. Like I want to know the cult of like the Sailor Moon girlies. Tell me why that is the most important cult that has ever existed. So I'm really excited and looking forward to bringing that aspect of the cult culture to the show. We are elbow deep in tasks. I know, Maggie, you are currently up and running on 2 podcasts now.
Just the one right now. The second premieres on the 17th. But I'm definitely trying to figure out that balance because you know my energy type. Like I'm definitely trying to figure out that balance of doing the editing, which I am enjoying. It's a lot. It can be a little bit of a slog because I do want to be meticulous. But yeah, just editing 2 shows, like what that's gonna feel like, how that's gonna look going forward.
Yeah.
And I want to give each of them the room, right? Like I want them each to be able to like have their own day, have their own set amount of time, even to just like talk about it wherever I can, you know what I mean? Like because they deserve equal amounts of time. So that's definitely been something to figure out. So it was funny the other day when you posted about naps, I was like, yeah, today is a day for that. And
Yeah.
exactly what you're talking about. Like I'm doing nothing. I'm gonna rot on the couch and I'm gonna eat like yummy chips and salsa and I'm gonna watch this Good Girls for like the 11 billionth time so I can just nap.
Yeah.
And that's just as important too, to like re-energize
Yeah.
and build that in. Like you have to be able to shut that
Yeah.
creative working brain off
Mm-hmm.
so it can reboot in a sense, like while you're doing nothing.
Yep.
But yeah, so
When you-
co-created is out. And then Which Dog Are You Today premieres on the 17th.
Very exciting.
So
Yeah,
yeah.
we had to go to Universal before we could do anything. It was literally like, okay, there's nothing can come out until we can play, until we can do something to like very much, this is a separation between doing things. I have time to vacate as many responsibilities as possible. And I really appreciate the very soft lob you have given me into our meditation today with some specific language that you used. You're like, what's that going to feel like doing 2? And I'm like, well, we've got to know what doing 1 feels like, right? We have to feel our capacity for doing 1. You're like, they need, equal space. Capacity. Again, thank you, right? So when we look at capacity and desire, right? The difference here, right? Whatever I desire that I don't have capacity for feels like fucking suffering. Okay. Desire minus capacity is suffering. Okay. So what is the best way to end our suffering, right? Well, it's actually to increase our tolerance for the things that we believe that we are suffering, to increase our capacity to feel the things we believe we are suffering, because most of the time when we're feeling them, we're pushing them away rather than pulling them in. And emotions are meant to be pulled in rather than pushed away, right? They move through, it's almost like an electrical current, like they move through our bodies and then our body naturally expresses them. So if you're not spending time sweating, peeing, drinking lots of water, if your body is not performing its natural functions, right? There are things that need to happen so that you can express some of this emotion, so that you're not having to push away emotion. You're allowed to pull it in, you're allowed to feel with it, you're allowed to be with it. And it starts by feeling your capacity for everything you have right now, right? So we are going to do a little meditation. We're going to visualize 2 things. So before we get in, I want everyone who is here to think about, and everyone listening, I want you to think about one thing that you know you have that you love. You're so glad you would put at the top of your gratitude list. I have this in my life, and I'm so glad I have it. I wanted it. I wanted it there, and it's here. Now, when you have that one, you are going to bring to mind one thing you know you have that you know you don't want. Right? One thing you know you have that you experience having. So you're like, hell no, right? So examples that I typically use with my clients that are pretty easy to go with. I wanted a big yard for my dogs, so I have a big yard for my dogs. I don't necessarily want bills sitting on the counter. However, I do seem to have them. So there must be something about them that I need, right? That I want, whatever it might be. So that's a very innocuous, I would say, example. I would encourage you to dig deeper than that for this meditation, bringing to mind something that you have that you're like, fuck yes, I manifested that, and I am so glad I have it. And one thing you have that you're like, I manifested that. No, thank you. Okay. And we are going to begin to settle in. So get yourself in a comfortable position. Start taking some normal breaths. Begin to notice how you're breathing right now. You notice yourself breathing more shallow, begin to deepen your breath. As you breathe in, feel your rib cage expand in the sides of your body. As you breathe out, begin to draw your attention inward. Imagine yourself sinking into the center of your body. Every breath in, breathing in trust. Every exhale, sinking deeper to the center of yourself. You notice any physical discomfort come up, please feel free to make yourself more comfortable. This can bring all kinds of sensations up. Breathing in trust and sinking into yourself. Notice where you find your center. In your center, bring into one hand the thing you are so glad you have. Squeeze it tight. Begin to ask yourself from your center, what is my capacity for this? Is how much I have enough? How much I have too little. Feel the weight of what you have. Imagine yourself having more. How much more do you need until you have enough? But how much do you want? Whatever difference you find between how much you have and how much you want. Look at it. Feel the wanting. Notice any physical sensations coming up in your body. You need to swallow. Maybe your body temperature is changing. Hold on to your center. And feel your wanting. The longer we can be with our wanting, the greater our capacity is for what we want. The longer we feel our capacity for what we already have, the more we can be with what we want. Turn your attention to your breath. Go back into your center. Notice if it feels different, or feels the same. From your center, bring into your hand what you have that you wish you didn't, that you don't want. Feel any physical sensations that come up. And ask yourself if you can be with this for just a moment longer. Feeling the sensation of what you don't want. The greater our capacity to feel what it is that we don't want, the greater our capacity is to heal for what causes us to continue having it. We must be able to pay attention. Be with it for just a moment. And then just a moment longer. Because this is a daily practice. Your capacity changes daily. What you need to focus on will change daily. And when you know your capacity, When you feel your capacity, you can increase your capacity for what you want and increase your ability to move through what you don't want to be with, to honor and relate to it so that you can move through it. Feel free to bring movement to your hands, to your feet, to your neck. Take some deep breaths. A drink of water. And you're ready. I encourage you to write about things that came up. I experienced a lot of sensation in very particular parts of my body. Some parts that I've had some sensitivity in the last couple of days feel really highlighted right now. And that makes me aware of where I have frozen typically, and that's what I feel I'm doing. Typically we freeze. If you fawn, you freeze and you avoid. Okay, so it's a shutdown, avoid, freeze, avoid response. And so in our bodies, we can freeze parts of our body so that we don't know that the pain is there, but everything around it seems as if it is in pain. And that is because the thing that is actually in pain is numb and everything around it is compensating for it. Right? This may sound familiar in your emotional life. This may sound familiar in your spiritual life, your relationships, things like that. So this is a meditation for any and every part of your life. And oh my, I just threw a bunch of cards, but we have a practice you daily awakening deck. So here is a mantra to get you into this place on your own. If you're not rewatching this for the meditation, what will you emphasize? What will you set free? This is what I am amplifying. This is what I release. All right. Feel free to share anything you would like about this meditation while I pull up or get the card.
So you had mentioned, I think you posted about just like the various maybe things that could be coming up in terms of like skin issues and gut issues and things like that. For me, it's always like the allergy type of symptoms that come up whenever I'm feeling like anxious about this thing. My dad and I had talked about it because he suffers the same affliction of like having that fear of how good it could be. And that's typically what is happening. And I know for me right now, it's like you and I had talked about bigger, not faster, right? And so I'm like, oh my gosh, this could get so big, which is great. Like that's what I want, right? But my body's like, no, like just pushing that container, and it does it through my sinuses and my lungs, which is crazy to me.
Yeah, so sinuses and lungs, first of all, like all of the various things that you talked about at the beginning, this is related to our boundaries, our follow through, and our capacity, right? So to get into like the allergy, lung, sinus, all of it, right? There's phlegmy, bleh, goopy matter, right? And think about how much viscera comes out on a baby when it's birthed, right? You got to clean that shit off. Okay. You got to clean that shit off, right? You clean up your baby, you bring them to you, you hold them close, you feel their first moments, right? You set yourself about cleaning them up, but you're not like immediately rejecting the viscera, right? It's like, come to me. Okay, cool. We're here. I've got you. We've got each other. And now we can deal with the shit, right? So for a lot of us, it's like, I was doing the thing and then I got sick. We're cleaning up. We're cleaning house. Literally, if you have not been cleaning your house, you need to be. Okay. We have moved so much stuff out of our house in the last 2 days. I told him, I was like, I don't want to see a single thing that reminds me of things we're not doing or working on right now.
Yeah.
I only want to see what we're doing, what we're working on. I don't want dust of shit that I'm not doing around. You know, if you are hobby collectors, if you are creative expression medium collectors, and that's not what you are doing in the moment, like you have to deal with the home space, right?
I purged my whole closet. I went through my closet and literally got rid of like
okay, and what are clothes? That is
everything.
communication, that's expression.
Yeah.
Right? When I talk about our Mercury signs, I always talk about communication as everything. It's not just what I say or don't say, or like maybe not even just my body language. Communication is also the clothes I wear, the car I drive, the or don't drive, the things, the job that I have or don't have, right? Communication is everything. So our clothes especially can hold on to energy that's not ours anymore, right?
Yeah.
Right.
I'm a Leo mark. So she said, we're not doing muted colors anymore.
It's time to
Black
go. That's
always,
not
but
me. I don't feel beige anymore.
no.
I want to be bright. I want to
Yep.
be big. I want to be bold, right? The sneezing, coughing, bleh, we were like, I literally woke up, I had no voice. Boop. If you have ever been energetically sick and you wake up with no voice, baby, let me tell you, if you are not immediately doing throat openers, you're missing out. There is something going on, right? Well, it was very clear to me what I needed to be using my voice for, but wasn't using my voice. But like I was at this impasse, right? We pulled the blank at the crossroads, and I felt like I was at this impasse where I was like, I don't know how to do the things that I'm trying to do in the place that I was trying to do it in, and I don't know what to do, right? And I had to go away to get my voice back, right? I had to go away. I wasn't going to do that here, right? So sometimes we have to take a break from the pattern. For me, the pattern had been just keep working, girl. You're fine. It's fine. Don't worry about it. Because like, and I told him, I was like, I am apparently not the type of person that thinks about taking vacation. So if you need a vacation, you probably need to tell me, because I guess I don't think about it, right? And like, if that's not on my radar, that doesn't mean that something's wrong with me. It just means like, thank goodness I have a partner that does not have the same level of like tolerance for that. Like, thank goodness I have a partner that wants to turn toward rest, that wants to turn towards play, that turn towards time off, right? So when we're experiencing skin issues, right? So I'm specifically talking about things that we're specifically talking about are boundaries, follow through, commitments, things like that, right? So boundaries are our skin. Follow through, we have allergies, we have phlegm, we have grief that comes up. You specifically mentioned chest. Our chest is where we hold grief, especially if you are in we are in grief season. By the way, it's death season, it's Scorpio season. We are in grief season. If you are in need of any lymphatic like draining, anything, you need to be doing that work at this time. At the minimum, just doing like EFT tapping on your like chest right here on your not your sternum, not like down in here, but like just up here. And our gut is our commitments, our follow through, our confidence in that follow through. And of course, all of these things are so interwoven with all of the other energetic centers. So today, what we are going to pull cards for, we're going to be pulling cards for people who are specifically working on boundaries right now, specifically working on follow through, and specifically working on increasing your capacity. So I'm going to talk a little bit about capacity, desire, suffering, all that good stuff for a moment, if you will allow me to monologue here. So we have been really diving into capacity, feeling the capacity you have for the things that you have, right? And noticing when you are beyond your capacity. When I'm beyond my capacity, I cannot employ a useful, a good, a helpful strategy if I have not spent significant time outside of that overstimulated state, inside my capacity. If I have not spent time inside my capacity, and sometimes my capacity is very, very limited. If my capacity is very limited for let's say you're the type of person who's like, oh, my tolerance for other people is really low, right? Like I got a super low tolerance for other people kind of annoy me, set me off like pretty quickly. It is probably in your best interest to increase your capacity for that, because well, one, just to, that's our loneliness kink, right? But also two, because we need other people. We are a species made for other people. So things like that, when you have a really low capacity, it's in your best for something, it's in your best interest to increase your capacity for those things for which you have the lowest capacity, kind of like one at a time, right? So if I identify, and I strongly recommend you be specific, you write down these kind of adaptations, these things that you're like, you know what, I do have, you know, I do respond or react in this way that I don't really love, and I'd love to shift that. You need to write it down, because you cannot be aware of it if it's not written down. And I would also say, don't just like give yourself a fucking list of like all of your shit and then don't do anything with it, because you're probably going to feel bad if you do that, right? So if you're making this list, I'm assuming that you have the self-responsibility to be following through on the things that you're doing. So you're bringing your awareness to these things, these adaptations, and then you're going, all right, I'm going to recognize each of these as, oh, when I'm doing this, I'm overstimulated. When I'm overstimulated, I do blank. That's the boundaries, right? That's the boundaries. When I feel this, I do this. And so when you can begin to follow this process of, again, these are my adaptations, these are the things that I'm doing that I'm like, would love if I was not showing up like that. I'd love to shift the way I show up in that way, right? I'm going to insert this boundary for myself. When I do this, then I do this, and then I have to follow through on it, right? And this is the way that we address the chest, the gut, and the skin all together, because they're all informing one another, especially if where you're having any skin issues are on your face. You're going to know, like you need to start, first of all, rabbit hole to dive into is look at the different meridians on your face and the correspondent organs, right? This is traditional Chinese medicine. I will share some accounts that I really like that I recommend following if you're into this kind of thing, but you're going to want to go look at your face map. You're going to want to see what organs maybe need more support. Maybe you're waking up in the middle of the night at a specific time over and over. Maybe you're waking up. I had a client we were talking about, she was waking up at this specific time. It was correspondent to the small intestine into the lungs. She traveled, she was eating all kinds of weird food, and she picked up a cough while she was gone. Your body is showing you these things all the time. And so if you're having skin issues, it's going to tell you what area of your body needs not just physical support, but also emotional and spiritual support. And that's what we're doing here, right? So again, if you're doing all of this and you are not also having downtime where you are not working, you are not also having alone time where you are not working, and you are also not having time in nature, I'm sorry, but none of this shit's going to work. Full stop, the end. None of the things I just said to you are going to be helpful for you. So you have to be able to do those things, address those things first, and then start adding your little fancy add-ons on. Because a lot of the things that we need, right? If your schedule is too full and you don't have time to spend time in nature, that's where we have to start, right? We have to start addressing our problems, our things that we want to work through, grow through, move through. We have to address them where we're at, not where we wish we were, right? So check the starting line, check where you're at, right? And own it. Start from there, not where you wish you were. Okay. So that is my monologue, capacity, desire, and increasing your capacity for the things that you may want to reject, you may find a lot of pain in. So let's pull some cards. Specifically, I'm going to pull for let's split this deck. All right, if you are working on boundaries, if you're working on follow through, and if you are working on increasing your capacity, I also want boundaries. Okay. Just kidding. All right, boundaries. If you are working on boundaries, we have the devil reversed. We have the devil reversed. That is a very interesting card to me that suggests that there is some resistance to acknowledging that this is your rock bottom and not someone else's. So let's orient to self-responsibility. When we are setting boundaries, boundaries are not about, hey, don't talk to me like that. Boundaries are, I do not stay in a conversation where people yell at me. And then I exit the conversation when they do the thing, right? Boundaries into follow through. The devil reverse suggests that there might be a little bit resistance to owning that maybe the boundaries are the thing that you need to be working on. So if you're feeling resistant to the idea that you may need to be the one setting boundaries with yourself, I strongly encourage you take an observer approach. Just ask yourself, what if this theory is correct? What if I, in fact, need to be setting boundaries with myself? And observe if that theory might be true in your world, right? I ask clients all the time, is it possible that? Is it possible that you think, is it possible that you could be doing this, that this could be something that you need to address, that you need to take care of, and that you're shirking responsibility? Is it possible? And then just look around. If it was possible that this was actually my responsibility, but I was shirking responsibilities, I'd probably be able to see physical manifestations of other shirked responsibilities in my life, right? If I can address those things, I can address them in here too, right? Boundaries are an in-house job. If I tell clients, don't text me after 4 p.m., and they text me after 4 p.m., I am setting myself up to have a challenging relationship with them. Because the reality is sometimes we are going through some shit at 2 o'clock in the morning. Okay. And the reality is 2 o'clock in the morning for me is not 2 o'clock in the morning in the other side of the country. Right. If I tell clients, I do not respond to work texts after 4 p.m. this day through this day, and they text me after 4 p.m., who fucking cares? Then I respond when I have the ability to. Those are boundaries. I cannot control someone else's experiences. I can't control someone else's capacity. I can't control someone else's situations, right? But I can set boundaries with myself. So ask yourself, is it possible that I might need to set boundaries? And if I'm maybe not setting boundaries, then what's my follow through look like? My follow through currently looks like 6 of Pentacles reversed, right? I follow through for everyone else but myself. That's what happens when you refuse to take responsibility for the fact that you need to set boundaries. You follow through for everyone but yourself. So if you want to work on your capacity, if you want to understand what your capacity feels like, you're going to have to, we've got 3 of Cups here. You're going to have to emotionally collaborate and stop taking on so much shit for yourself. Right? Stop making everyone else's experience your responsibility. That's what this trio is. Everyone else's experiences are not your responsibility. The experience other people have of you is not your responsibility. Other people's capacity for you is not your capacity for what you can do. Okay. Other people's perceptions of what you're doing, whether they like it, they don't like it, none of that shit goes on your back. None of that is yours. So, what can we practically do? Right. Let's look at what is the capacity right now. What is their capacity for? What is their capacity for? Shadow and sharing wisdom. You probably have more capacity for tolerating your shadow than you think. And when you learn to tolerate your shadow, I'm going to tell you lots of magic unfolds there, because all kinds of parts of your personality come up for reclamation. Your shadows are not just the dark and spooky parts of yourself that want to hurt you and hurt other people and whatever. And also, if you think that, that probably is a large part of your shadow that you're denying, right? That you're denying that you've got this sadistic urge to like do those things, right? But I digress. We will not go down that rabbit hole at this exact moment. You have the capacity for confronting the shadow, for meeting the shadow that you need to in this moment. You also have the capacity for sharing that confrontation, right? So how do we share in this world? One of the ways that we share in this world, or we refuse to share, is by putting out how good it is once we're doing the thing, right? So if I am working on my show and then I have a really low capacity for shadow, I'm going to shut up and not talk about my show, right? I'm going to stop talking about it. But if I have a high capacity, right, I'm going to put out my spark because, oh my God, what might someone else think? What might someone else do? Right. But if I have the capacity for sharing the things that I've learned, for sharing the things that I've done or experienced or whatever it might be, I don't have to put that out at cost to me. I don't have to put that out for anyone else unless I choose to. I'm also interested to know what is lying outside of our capacity that we need to address and build tolerance for. Routine. Routine. Some of our routines are still created and constructed from the same perspective. If you have ever retired from your profession, that is how we refer to Ryan leaving the fire station. If you have ever retired from your profession to work for yourself, you will know that it becomes very, very easy to recreate the same cycles and structures and ways of running that you were used to, that you had modeled for you, especially if you have parents that maybe work for themselves. It becomes like, I got something to prove, blah, 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 right? So the answer to some things that are within our capacity that we are pretending are outside of our capacity is the capacity for discipline, the capacity to be consistent, the capacity to do something with as big as this can get. Okay, so if you are like me and like Maggie, and you are someone who's like, oh no, I might actually get what I want, this is for you. The Ace of Pentacles has the highest potential. You have the capacity for the highest potential with this. Feel that. Don't run from that. Feel it. Feel that you have the highest potential possible with this seed. Maybe you're still holding on to the seed. Maybe you put the seed in the ground. Something I think is really interesting is in this depiction of Ace of Pentacles, there's a hand both on top and underneath it, maybe suggesting that you find this is something that's so precious, right? There's a separation from the ground that you see. You find it so precious that you're trying to hold on to it because you're kind of afraid if I put this in the ground, I'm going to actually know what happens. Well, you have the capacity to find out what happens. You have the capacity to find out what happens. And we also have justice. Some of us are maybe afraid of getting a little away from themselves. Maybe you've done something like this before and you feel like you've lost yourself or you've hurt yourself in it. Maybe you've made yourself vulnerable in a way before and you feel as if you don't have like that vulnerability is too high of a sensation. Maybe you're someone who's like, oh yeah, I've done that before. And when I did it, I really hurt myself. So I'm not going to do it because I'm afraid I'm going to hurt myself again, because you don't actually trust yourself to use the tool in a different way, right? Those are the deeper things you have the capacity to be with right now. These are the deeper things that are outside of your control. And I want to know what is going to go into the fuck it bucket. What do I not have the control to deal with right now? What is outside of my capacity? First of all, whether or not it's successful. Boop. Whether or not it's successful is totally out of your control. Right. So I would strongly recommend renegotiating your definition of success. Is success showing up for it, or is success a specific outcome? If you don't have a specific outcome over time, but you're denying that it's making you unsuccessful, why? Wouldn't it help you to acknowledge that this has not been successful in the ways you've done it thus far and try something different? So for wherever you're at on your journey, other people's ideas of what it means for you to be successful, whether or not this is successful, that is going to be entirely up to your perspective on what you think success is. Also in the fuck it bucket, Queen of Swords reversed. Maybe some people are really not going to like it. Maybe some people are going to be genuinely affected by it in a way that you are going to have to learn how to be with. That's fine. I trust you. I trust you to learn how to be with that, right? I trust you to learn how to be with other people's experiences without trying to change them, because that's ultimately what this comes down to. I don't want to do this because what will they think? And then I'll have to deal with what they're thinking. That's really the deeper thing. Then I have to be with whatever it is that happens. I trust you to be yourself, to remain embodied without losing yourself to what other people say, do, feel, experience, or perceive in whatever it is that you're doing. And finally, we have Page of Pentacles reversed. You do not have control over the time this will take. You only have control over the patience. What was it that we read? Patience. Let self-control be your furnace and patience be your goldsmith. I've had a mantra that keeps coming up on my Spotify Oracle, and I'm like, I rarely listen to this. Like, this song has maybe had 5 overall plays on my thing thus far, and now it's come up twice in 2 days. I'm listening, I'm paying attention, I'm looking it up, what's happening, right? So I'm looking it up and it says, let self-control be your furnace and patience be your goldsmith. Self-control, discipline, showing up for the process, right? Those are things that are going to keep the fire going. Those are the things that you can measure by which you are successful, right? And patience be your goldsmith. Patience being the thing that overall shapes the trajectory of this, right? I imagine for a lot of us, the ideas that we have, like, they're like this big right now. And ultimately, over time, we're going to get them into whatever shape it is that they're going to be taking. And it's going to become a little more fine-tuned, right? The important part right now is to continue showing up for it, to continue showing up for it before it's a final product, before it's in its final form. Let it have the time and space that it needs to evolve, and continue to show up for it. So to recap again, if you are someone who has been struggling with boundaries, the reminder is that the boundaries are for yourself. So if you are having a hard time acknowledging, hey, I maybe have a hard time with boundaries, or I maybe need support setting boundaries because I don't actually set boundaries as well as I maybe tell myself I do, I want to encourage you to ask yourself, is it possible that, or if it were possible that I'd need to set more boundaries, what area of my life might I need to do that in? Oh, well, if something came to mind, start there. But asking yourself, if I did need to take responsibility for setting these boundaries, if this was on me to do, what would I need to do? Because when you don't do them, your follow through sucks. You follow through for everyone but yourself, right? You overgive. So the things that we need to do are understand that other people's perspectives, other people's perceptions, they are not what ultimately guides us. That is not something that we have to carry on our back. Their opinion, their perspective, their path for us, their opinion, their perspective, and their path for us. Those are not things that we have to carry on our back. You can take those away. Okay. Their opinion, their perspective, what they think of us. So things that you have capacity for that you're telling yourself you don't: structure, discipline, being able to put this potential into the ground and let it happen, let yourself see what comes of it. And you have the capacity to do this in a balanced way where you don't lose yourself. You don't have to sacrifice yourself. Like I said, if you have to do it to get it, you got to do it to keep it. And justice is a reminder that you do have the capacity to do these things in balance in a way that feels good for you, right? That structure, remember from a couple of weeks ago, there's a meditation, the structure, thinking of air as structure, right? It's gentle. It's not constricting. It swells and it shrinks in results to the capacity, right? Your structure should increase and decrease based on your capacity. But if you don't know your fucking capacity, you are going to need to know the capacity first, right? We've got to start somewhere, right? And capacity is the place where we can stop the story, because capacity means I'm just overwhelmed, or I'm in a good place and I'm moving toward overwhelm, or I'm moving toward being in a good place, right? It is a point of orientation now. And finally, things that you do not have control over, please put this in, like I said, your bucket immediately. You don't need it. You don't need to worry about it. Whether or not this is going to be successful, other people's perceptions of whether or not it's successful, other people's feelings, thoughts, comments, beliefs, whatever about what it is that you're doing. I would also include your own self-judgment and maybe asking yourself why you have so many people in your life through whom you project self-judgment. That would be a really interesting question to ask yourself. I've really been grappling with the inner judge lately, so please take these par-cooked thoughts for what they are. But the inner judge is one that I've really been working with, as like this discernment, this ability to genuinely feel our capacity. We need to have access to it. And for me, it got really muddied in judging myself, judging other people, things like that, because that was how I learned to survive. And I'm not in survival mode anymore. So I'm learning something new. And I'm learning that, just like I'm saying, I have this capacity to be with my own inner judge in a way that is productive, right? But I have to be able to face it. I have to be able to show myself I have this capacity for it. And also, you don't have control over the amount of time this thing is going to take. You only have control over, like, stop holding it in your fucking hand. Literally stop holding it in your hand. Shit or get off the pot. That is the Saturn direct message. Just so y'all know, Saturn went direct in Pisces. I have loved Saturn in Pisces thus far. I know I may be the only one. I know there are plenty of Saturnian people like myself who are like, please beam me up, Scotty, get me out of here. This is so uncomfortable. And I'm just like swimming in it, because it genuinely feels like soft, cushy pouring into structure. And that's what I've needed from Daddy Saturn all along, right? Some soft, cushy pouring into of the self. And so the only thing that Saturn has to tell you is, like, you already know you have to stop just holding on to this thing. Just put it in the ground, let it rip, and see what happens. Like, if you could be consistent for 5 days. Oh my God, I was consistent for 5 days. What happens if I'm consistent for 10 days? What happens if I'm consistent for 20 days, for 40 days with this thing? And you just build over time. Like, honestly, like I love Duolingo for its little like, hey, you completed a 30-day stretch. Do you want to recommit? Okay, recommit to 14 days. Great, you did 14 days. Do you want to commit to 30? And there's a regular check-in with your freaking goals, right? Like it's helpful. It is a helpful way to make progress towards your goals, right? So what if I could be consistent just for today? What if I could surrender to my schedule just for today? Could I hold the possibility that being consistent could be just one day? Okay, I did that. What if I could be consistent in doing this for 5 days, addressing this pattern or addressing this this thing that always overstimulates me or whatever it might be, whatever you're working on, just 5 days. Oh my God, I did 5 days. I can do 5 days. That means I could probably do another 5 days. And you continue to re-up on your commitment to yourself, right? You continue to recommit to yourself. You continue to commit to whatever part of either finding your pattern, addressing your pattern, making progress in your professional life, your relationship life, your career, creativity. Like this is so all purpose because boundaries and follow through and commitment affect every area of our life, not just one, right? So that is what I have today. Does anyone have anything they want to share or want to chat about the reading?
I had to look up which house my mark is in. That's a Leo mark.
Mm-hmm.
And a Sag ruled house. It's in the 9th house.
Yes. Okay.
Whoa. And I was just thinking about that in terms of expression because it's something that has come up my whole life where what we know about astrology, people are like, oh, you're a water sign, but you don't come across that way. No, because I have them like any possible placement in a significant fire, like it's there. And so, yeah, I have this like really yummy, nurturing Cancer sun in the 8th house. But like, I feel sometimes like that's my saving grace because if I had it in any other placement, like I would be a fucking terror. I would be Snooky. Like it would not be, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I would not be a good time for anyone.
Yeah. I think that especially when we have like, for example, Aries is the natural first house ruler. So we have a fire sign in a fire sign house. It sets us up for a good time. Okay. It sets us up to be able to, like, for you, having Sagittarius and the rising sign, like there's this identity that's embraced of being this kind of like firecracker, right? But it's also like, but everyone expects that of me. If I embrace this Gemini side of me, this other side of me, then I bring in more of my own paradox. I bring in both sides of me, the one where I love being this firecracker, especially when other people love it, and this other part of me that doesn't give a fuck what other people think about me, that is a total self-contained, like I think of it like the movie Biodome, right? Like they had this like own self-contained little like ecosystem, right? That's Gemini. Gemini is fucking chilling. Gemini is chilling in the biodome that exists like everyone else. And like, that's, I think we're on a side tangent here, but that's one of the reasons that I think people project onto Gemini the most is because, especially for Sagittarius rising, and people with strong Gemini placements, when you can reclaim Gemini energy for yourself rather than the projections that you saw of it, the reflections that you saw of it, it becomes so much more potent to wield. Like for me, Gemini in my 6th house and reclaiming that meant, okay, if I stopped going, okay, I have ADHD and that's why I can't do that, or I'm a projector and that's why I can't do this, and this is why I have this and I can't do this and I can't. If I instead said, what the fuck does a 6th house Gemini mean and how can I embrace that? That means sometimes I am riding up here and sometimes I am down here, and I don't have to resent either of those things anymore. Right. And I can embrace that sometimes I'm going to crank shit out, I'm going to get shit done. And sometimes I'm not going to do that. Right. And it becomes so much more of a whole experience where you, as like the chart native, right, you feel that Cancer sun can comfort you, that can give you that comfort, that soft energy. You can also provide that for other people if that's something that you want to do, right? But like the Leo Mercury, especially Leo Mercury in a ninth house, is like leadership. Like that's leadership all day. It's commanding the story, right? Sagittarius is the storyteller. I think Sagittarians and Capricorns are some of the best astrologers because astrology is storytelling meets math. And in order to, that's the other thing that Loki's been like really talking about is the storytelling of it all, right? Like telling this story and being able to choose the story of your own accord, and guide it. Like you have the ability to control people's perspectives on things when you put it into, and that's a big responsibility, right? Like one of my and that's like the thing that I think that for myself anyway, I get the most scared of when I'm thinking about being successful is it's like, oh my God, I could be really good at this. I could be like, this could be really easy. I could influence a lot of people. And then it's like, oh no, but I change my mind all the time. So like, what if I influence people in some like terrible direction? And then I'm like, by the way, we're going to take a hard ride up here. And these people who have been influenced in this one direction keep going straight. And then I have to remind myself, like, it's not my business. It's not my business where they get on or off the train. It's not my business where they buy in or don't. And so I don't have to be scared of my potential because I'm scared of what other people could do with my potential. Right? Like that for me is like one of the biggest parts, one of the biggest components of not being afraid to just fucking do it. And like, again, like that was like such a big part of what we'd been doing. And I did realize for myself that like identity was wrapped up in it, right? Yeah. Like our names, the words that we use, all of those things, like they matter, they give importance to these things, they give weight to them. So
don't gatekeep who you inspire.
And with that, I say, throw out the idea that you have an ideal listener, that you have an ideal client, that you have an ideal customer, and just show up as your most freaking authentic self. Because the thing is, like, and I've long since like talked about this, but like I have clients who literally heard one thing that I did and they were like, done, sign me up. I have someone that I've worked with for 2.5 years now. She heard me on one podcast and was like, done. This is the person that I work with. This is the person that I want to be with. You will have your people who are just like, hell yes, I'm all in and I get it. And you will have people who don't care or don't know. And that's also fine too, you know? That's the thing that I have to keep returning to. The Leo just, it's the Leo, right? Like you're like, oh no, though, what if I'm not the best and prettiest and coolest and most favorite of everyone? That would be a nightmare. Like, so.
That is my nightmare. That is my nightmare.
All right, y'all. I am going to get off then. We are going to finish getting the house ready for the week and get on with our days. I hope you have a lovely week. Feel free to message me anything about the reading, hang out in the group chat. And that is all. I will talk to y'all later, okay? Bye.